of the way. Okay, so I still have my still life set up from the last two drawings, and I'm just going to use that one today for the demo for consistency. And but to start out with, we're going to treat our paper different. And I know I got a few emails in the middle of the night from people. I've had classes. I have a class at 9. This one 11:30, and then one at 2. So if you emailed me, it may be later today before I get a chance to reply. But I saw one, I think maybe yesterday, from a student that was saying that when they were using their charcoal in their sketchbook, that they just didn't feel like it was working right. And I understand, like, sometimes it does feel weird, and I know I've been making art for probably over 30 years now. So sometimes I know I watch other people demonstrate stuff sometimes, and then I try it and I'm like, they made it look so easy. So sometimes it may just be like experience that helps you learn to control these materials better. But the reason I do a demo for every assignment is because I know not all of you have used these materials your whole life. And I had classes where teachers just assumed that we knew how to use materials that we didn't. And so that's what I'm going to do today. Is I'm actually going to show you a better way of working with charcoal that will probably make it easier. I just kind of last week with the sustained gestures, I was wanting to see kind of what you did intuitively with it, and what you could kind of and just see how natural you took to the charcoal and to blending. Now, there are sometimes different hardnesses of the charcoal that could also play a role in how it's marking on your surface. But if we encounter that today, I'll kind of point that out to you. So first thing that I'm going to do is for this assignment, it's actually best if it is taped down to your drawing board. So if you have a drawing board, it's like this little Masonite MDF board, particle board kind of thing. If you don't have a drawing board, what you could use is you can go to Home Depot or Lowe's, and they have this brown wood material. It's called MDF board, or you can get Masonite. It's basically the same thing, but they have 24 by 24 inch pieces that are pre-cut, like in the lumber area. And I think it's like under $4 for a 24 by 24 piece of this Masonite material. Don't go there and ask them for a drawing board, because they're going to have no idea what you're talking about. But if you go buy one of these drawing boards with like this clamp on it at the art store, it's probably going to be $20. But you can go to Home Depot or Lowe's, get this same material, and a little bit bigger, that your drawing paper will fit perfectly on it. And you can use both sides for your if you want to work on more than one drawing at once. And it's also so cheap, you might be able to buy more than one if you want to have multiple drawings that you're working on. So I just wanted to let you all know, if you didn't have a drawing board, you could use that. But you always want to tear your drawing paper out of your drawing pad, just because you don't want to mess with the pages underneath it, where you may emboss them. And then those lines that you emboss into those under papers, they may show up later when you do something to it. So I've got a piece of the drawing paper on my board. This is the thicker, not the newsprint. This is the actual drawing paper. And then I have this blue painter's tape. And the painter's tape, I can't remember if that came in the kit or not. If it didn't, if you go to Dollar Tree or Dollar Store, any of the dollar stores, they usually have an aisle with tape and stuff, and you can get, I think they're like $1. And so it doesn't have to be like the super expensive, like frog tape or anything like that you see at the hardware stores. So this works great for paper because it doesn't really stick that much, and you can peel it off your paper. But you never want to use regular masking tape, because it will tear your paper. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go around each edge, and I'm going to slightly overlap the paper maybe a quarter of an inch at most. This tape is somewhat kind of transparent, so you may be able to see like the edge of the paper through it, and then that will help you kind of lay it down more evenly. And the reason we're doing this is one, we want a nice clean edge so that if you ever wanted to mat or frame it, you're not going to take away from your drawing. But also, sometimes we'll use these clamps and then we forget to move our drawing, and then you end up with like a halo on your drawing where you didn't draw in that area. And of course, we don't want that. So I'm putting the tape on all four edges. Now, if you do leave this tape on more than probably a few days, it may be hard to take off, but I'm going to show you how to pull it off without hurting your paper or your drawing. I'll do that before we move on. So you want to try to keep it somewhat consistent, you know, with your edges. So just try to look and see how much of it overlapped, and then press it down. Now, if you have an older drawing board that's got scratches or paint or anything on it, some of that texture may come through. So one thing you could do to help avoid that is you could put a piece of like newsprint behind your drawing paper to help cushion it a little bit. So let's say I had a finished drawing on here. What I always have students do is I'll see them in class when we were face to face, and they will just grab this tape and just like rip it up, and then they'll tear their drawing across the whole page. Don't ever do that, okay? Especially if the tape's been on there, you know, a few days. Like, you never want to do that because it will ruin your drawing. So what you want to do is roll the tape away and keep it parallel to the surface. So if this was a finished drawing and I've already sprayed it, you always want to spray it with the tape on so that it doesn't ruin your clean edges. So spray it with your fixative, then take the tape off, okay? But when you take it off, keep the tape flat. And do you see how I'm like rolling it away from the edge of the drawing? So that way, if it does tear the paper some, it will tear it away from the drawing and not into the drawing, okay? So that's just a little tip is to avoid tearing your drawing is always keep it parallel to the surface and then roll it off to the side, not towards your drawing so that you don't ruin it. So I'm just going to put another piece down. And if you do tear it, there are some tricks to sort of fix it, but I've just seen students like cry before because they had such a beautiful drawing and then they got too excited taking the tape off and they ruined it. All right, so now that I have my edges taped, this is the fun part. We're going to get a little messy. You're going to take a stick of your willow charcoal and your vine charcoal. This is the one that's not permanent. And you're going to just lightly just start shading, kind of scribbling all over. Now, if you're doing this and your charcoal is making like the sounds of like wild animals screaming in the woods, then it may not be burned all the way through. So you may grab another piece that's softer because you don't want to be scratching the paper. It should go down really softly, okay? So every now and then I can kind of hear, it sounds like there's some hard stuff in mine. But you want it to just kind of go down in a nice pattern. Always do this part flat because you don't want all the dust to go everywhere. So it kind of is a nice way to relieve some, you know, aggression, just kind of scribbling all over. So then we're going to take our a paper towel, just a paper towel, and really lightly, I'm barely pressing down in a circular motion. I'm moving the charcoal around and working it into the texture of the paper. But you don't want to press down too hard. If you press down too hard, then it's going to smooth the paper out, and then your charcoal is not going to want to write on the surface anymore. So you don't want to get rid of the texture. Now, depending on your charcoal, it sometimes, depending on the type of tree that they use to get the charcoal, it may be dark enough or not. But what we want is a nice middle, even gray. Okay, so if we were, my hands are now dirty, but let me see. If we were looking at like my value scale here, we would want something more in the middle all over. Okay, so I'm going to add another coat of this because I do want it to be covered and I don't want to see really any lines throughout it. Now, if your charcoal is really hard and you can hear it kind of scratching the surface too much, or it's like kind of squeaking and making weird sounds, I would find like a piece of sandpaper or a rough surface that you can kind of grind it down and then just put the powder on the paper and work the powder in that way. Sometimes I'll take like one of those little cooking things like to grind cinnamon, and I'll use that, or a piece of sandpaper if I have charcoal that's kind of not burnt all the way through. Okay. All right, so again, don't press too down. You're not wanting to polish the paper. I'm hardly applying any pressure at all. All right, so that looks pretty good. I've got a nice medium gray on my paper. So now I'm going to put it up on my easel, a little easel, or you can lean it against your table, whatever you use to draw from. And you can see my still life over here. Now I'm going to just kind of clean off this area real fast. You can get as messy as you want at your place. I just have to teach painting right after this class, so I don't want charcoal everywhere. And then I'm going to turn off my overhead light so that it helps the light on my still life a little bit better. Okay, so this is I can't really tell, it looks so bright on the little tiny image I can see, but this is like a nice middle gray. I think it's just because the lights are shining over here, they're kind of illuminating the paper here. So now the next step is to do a quick gesture of your still life. Now remember, you don't have to draw every object, you just have to draw what is in your view. And so you may want to choose to, I would set up a still life. If you have the same one up, you could use that. But have multiple objects, have some overlapping, have a backdrop of some kind, just like all the same kind of rules that we've gone over so far. Also, because this is one of our master drawings, if you think that your composition will work better horizontally, turn your paper horizontal. It's up to you. One way to kind of find a good view is you can use like your phone and try taking a picture and kind of zooming in and seeing, I don't know if you can really see that, but you can kind of zoom in and find a composition that you like. I really don't want you working from a photo, but this can help you kind of learn to see, like what you think would be a nice composition. All right. So you could do that. And then I don't know the type of phones that you have, but there is a way that you can, with most phones, you can make black and white. So if you're having trouble seeing the different values, you could even put your phone in black and white, and maybe that will kind of help you see what that will look like, what it should look like in your drawing. Okay, so you can use that. You can also, just kind of use your fingers and make like a little rectangle and kind of find a view that's that way. That's what we used to have to do. Or I would use an actual slide from like an old slide projector, and I would use that and kind of close one eye and use it as a viewfinder that way to find a good composition in my drawing classes. So, all right, so now I'm going to come back over here. All right, so I'm going to draw a quick little gesture and get like the objects that I want to draw. So And it's okay for objects to go off the paper. Remember, we talked about how that actually kind of helps the composition sometimes. To just do a quick gesture. Don't spend forever working on the gesture. Remember, the gesture is all going to be covered over as you add the different layers of charcoal. So don't get too detailed because the details won't come until the very end. Okay, so sometimes I'll have students, at this point they'll draw in like every little tiny detail, and I'm like, no, like you're totally gonna you're not gonna be able to keep those because we're really gonna try to get rid of lines in this exercise. All right, now let's say we mess up. I know you've probably been taught, or maybe you just did it instinctively as a kid, but we would just like, I messed up, let's throw this away. But what's so cool about this technique is that if you mess up, all you have to do is get a paper towel, and because we have the charcoal down already, it just blends it in right away. And so it's kind of like an Etch-a-Sketch if you ever played with one of those. So if you mess up, it's no worries. We're not using anything permanent at this point. Okay, so don't worry about that so much. So I'm gonna redraw that. So just do a quick gesture, a couple minutes at the most. Look at other objects. Like I just took a minute I was going to be drawing this little bottle, and I looked and it's a little bit lower than this one I drew here. So use like directional lines like to see how things line up. That's one way to get them accurate when drawing. So just keep it really loose and sketchy. That's in the wrong place. Okay, so I think that is pretty much all that's in this view that I have. So the rest of this is just kind of dark, the dark fabric, excuse me. And, oh, I forgot to draw. Okay, so once you get to this step, I've got my quick little gesture down. Now our next step is this is where it's going to feel a little strange probably to most of you that haven't worked this way before. Your next step is to erase the highlights that you see, okay? So I know that may be kind of scary, but this is going to help you start to see kind of the third dimension. And so we have the middle ground. We're now erasing the highlights that we see. And if it's tiny highlights, that you see from really fine reflections, of course you're not going to have to get all those details right away. But if it's like bigger areas, definitely. I of course had to choose like all these glass and metal and plastic things, so there's all kinds of wild reflections and things. So mine may be a little more complex. Normally for this first still life in class, I set up just like all white objects for the students to draw. So if you have like white objects or you have access to some spray paint, that may be one way to kind of help. You could spray paint some objects white, and that might kind of help you. One teacher I know has her students draw just like wadded up white pieces of paper piled on top of each other, but that seemed kind of mean. I don't know what you all are into, what subject matter you want to draw, but try to have things that are somewhat simple if this is like your first time to do this. So I'm just loosely erasing some of the highlights. And then you're going to come and start putting in the darker values that you see with your compressed charcoal. And so you may have the bars, like the different compressed charcoal bars. You have to use the compressed charcoal though. You can put in some of the more middle values with the willow charcoal, but the willow charcoal, the paper will only hold so much of it. Do you see how because it's just there's no binder in it. So if you put too much of this down, it's not going to allow the compressed charcoal to really come in and do its job. So I'm going to take the compressed charcoal, and this background is just black because I have this black fabric behind it. So I'm just going to come in and darken in this area. So if you have negative space like around your composition, anything that's not in the still life, if you wanted to just color it black with the compressed charcoal, that will probably be your best bet to kind of make it look like deep space. And I'm kind of just scribbling it on, but I will work it into the paper more in just a moment because you do want to really get it in there. And that's where a lot of students don't like to use their fingers or those tortillions, but if you really want it to look like deep space, you really have to flatten that black out and get it worked into the paper. So I'm kind of using my fingers in a circular motion. Getting it into all those little teeth of the paper. And the whole point of doing like a value study, and this is called additive and subtractive drawing because we're adding the charcoal to the paper first, but then we're also subtracting the charcoal for the highlights. So that's why it's called additive and subtractive, or sometimes you'll see it called reductive charcoal drawing. People use different adjectives to describe it. But do you see how black that looks now? So you always want to blend the charcoal when possible if you have like really dark areas to make it really look like that deep space. So already with just the black dark value behind it and then some of these highlights and then the middle value, it's already looking more three-dimensional. And so what we want to avoid is drawing outlines on everything, and I talk more about that in the lecture. So again, try to watch that. But you can avoid drawing lines by getting values, and usually what we see with the different values is we see a dark edge next to a lighter edge, and so that's where a lot of people will mess up is they want to draw an outline, but there may not be an outline there. We really don't see a lot of bold outlines. We see like a light edge next to a darker edge. And so what you have to kind of do is go through each object and then see, like, do I see, is it a dark edge or a lighter edge? Now this is a glass bottle that I'm drawing, so I see all sorts of reflections and then darker areas in it as well. So I'm trying to capture all of that. And up here I see it's a little bit darker behind the lip of this thing, and then it's kind of darker back here. And this bottle is really dark, but not as dark as the fabric. So you kind of have to just compare the values of the different objects and just keep it rough. Like nothing has to be permanent. It all can be erased and redefined. And then don't forget, you also have your kneaded eraser. if you get too dark in an area. And then, of course, you have your charcoal pencils, which are great. Let me find. So the charcoal pencils are nice because for like smaller areas, you can come in and add those details without having to, use the big. Whoops! I think my lamp just fell over. Without having to use the big blunt piece, but they do have like I have the compressed charcoal in like different size bars. So I like to use both sizes, and I like to use the softer compressed charcoal because I want to blend it. If I need to make sharper edges, I usually will use the charcoal pencil for that. So you just have to constantly look back and forth where you see highlights, where you see shadows. And the more that you put that stuff in, I'm not really super blending or anything yet at this point. I'm just kind of trying to flesh everything out and get most of the bigger areas of highlight or shadow where I see them, and then that will help me know where to refine it later. And if you all have any questions or anything, feel free to put it in the chat or just share, ask away. I can draw and make art all day long, so sometimes I've been in some classes and I looked over and nobody was there and it was past the class time and I was like, oh, okay, I was teaching. Because you just get into that art making zone, so it's kind of hard sometimes to disconnect. All right, so you can see how it's already, this is still really rough, but you can see how it's starting to look more three-dimensional. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. I've found, believe me, I'm scared of a lot of things, and I make mistakes. Like, art's all about what are you going to do next, learning from one project and taking that into the next one you do. But I find that whenever I'm scared of making a mistake, I'm probably going to make a mistake because I'm thinking about making a mistake. So sometimes, like this, I know it's easier said than done, but sometimes just having a little confidence and trusting yourself will help you more than anything. So as you get into areas, just look like what's darker, what's lighter. So as I got to this like little orange thing that's on this like cologne bottle, it's really bright compared to this bottle that's back behind it. So that lets me know, okay, I need to make that bottle a little darker. So just go through the whole thing like that, treat it like a gesture, and then you can come back in and start to blend and add the details. And when you get ready to add the details, that's where your little clicky eraser, your retractable eraser comes into play, because then you can start coming in and really getting in. I like this one better, I think. That's when you can come in. I see like a little highlight on this back edge of this bottle. So you can see it's almost like I'm drawing with white chalk when I do this. And there is a white chalk that comes with your kit, but I would not, for the drawing one student, I would not use it just yet, because I think that when you mix it with the charcoal, it looks different than just using it by itself. So if anything, I would only use the white chalk once you've finished with everything, and maybe there's like a couple of highlights that are super reflective that you can't really get with your with the eraser, then maybe you could add those, but you always want to add those right before you spray it. So you don't ever want to really work that into your paper unless you're using it all over. But it makes a different gray that looks kind of more like a middle gray, but more, it has like a cool tone to it. So it almost looks sort of like concrete, the mixture it makes. So you don't want to do anything to that's going to mess. You'll have to go back and add it in other places too. I don't know if what I'm saying is making sense. It's hard to focus on the art and talk at the same time. All right, so I'm just going around and like just cleaning up edges. I'm not outlining things. I'm just looking at, okay, which edge is darker and which part is lighter, and then trying to push those things back, and you'll see it already is kind of coming into play more. So, and how long has it been? What's the time say? Only like an hour that we've been in class, and I've already gotten this far, and like it really, I could probably finish this in like maybe another hour or two. Of course, I've done this before, but you can see like if you work really fast with those gesture, like all the techniques that we've learned so far, you can get a really nice composition, and then it's just putting in the values where you see them, and having that willow charcoal down, toning the paper first, it really helps you blend the other charcoal on top of it. And I know I'm using my fingers a lot. If you don't like to use your fingers, you can use these little blending stumps. They work too. I trust my finger more than I trust the blending tool. So it's kind of whatever you want to use. I like to use my fingers more. And I know I had teachers tell me not to all through school because they're like, it's not going to last forever if you touch it too much with your fingers because we have oils and stuff. But I mean, if it lasts my lifetime, I'm fine with that. I don't know that this is the piece of art people are going to be dying to have, long after I'm gone, if any of my art at all. Anyone feels that way about it. So, I think it'll be fine if you blend a little bit with your fingers. But you can see it's already starting to look more 3D, and so having that middle value, doing your gesture, erasing the highlights, then putting in the darker values, that you've already got 3 values there. So then you just have to go, back and forth from your objects to this. And, if it's hard to see, in your objects or the light changes, and you do have, I shouldn't be telling you this, but you do have the photo. I don't want you to work from the photo though. I want you to try to do most from it. But, if you do have this photo, and you're like, I can't really see what's going on there, you could zoom it in, and look at it closer and be like, oh, okay, I can do that if you want to get that serious about it, okay? But I'm expecting you to do, your best, and I do want it to have really nice edges. But what I don't want to see is bold outlines on anything, okay? So unless it's like, I do have some lines because of the glass and the streaks that are in the glass. But what I don't want to see is, an outline like a contour drawing, because we've moved on from that. And with value, you want to purge the lines out of your art. So everything that we see, usually there's not bold outlines on it. It's like a highlight and then a shadow. And even if you look at like this little bottle here, there's like a highlight on the edge and then a shadow. And then these little ridges here, it's kind of more shadow, and then a highlight on this ridge, and then there's a highlight here and a shadow here. So everything we see is in this range of values. And so you just have to learn how to apply those and tell your brain you don't have to outline everything, okay? So that's probably, if you submit the assignment early, or if you post it on Padlet, and for me to give feedback to, which I did get some notifications that some of you were posting, so that's great. I can't wait to see what you posted on there. But a lot of times what I'll do is I'll say like, oh, I see a bold outline there, you may want to look at that area closer, and that would be me talking to myself too, because that's what I just noticed in my own drawing. And then I see that, oh, there is kind of a shadow here, and this kind of gradates out. So you want to just look at all those things closer, like where you may have oversimplified. Another thing you can do, turn your drawing another direction. When I just did that, I'm like, whoa, look at this edge of this jar. It looks like way thicker here than here. So by turning it another direction and looking at it, sometimes you'll notice things that you don't see when you're looking at it right side up. So turning it different directions, turn upside down. And of course, once you get it to the point that you're happy with it, then you can come with the workable fixative and or the final fixative and spray it. I still need to work on mine some more, and if I have time this week to finish it up, maybe that's what I can work on during Wednesday's classes, just work on this some more. But before, I wanted to show the Drawing 2 students the other paper that they may want to work on. And this is the, whoops, let me show you, I forgot to do this. So this is the white charcoal pencil, and it basically is just like a white chalk. So if you have like a set of Conte that has a white Conte, you could use that too. But again, don't add it in here until you're done. But let me just show you some of the things I'm talking about. So I don't know if you can, how clearly you can see this, but on this little perfume bottle here, there's this one like really, really bright reflection that is way brighter than everything else. And same thing like on this glass bottle here, I see some reflections that are really bright. And then on this one, so those are the things that you may want to use the white, if you can't get the paper super white. So let's just pretend that I'm finished. That one little highlight on this little lid is really, really bright. So maybe that's where, when I'm finished, I could add like that little spot of reflection that will just make it pop a little bit. But don't feel like you have to. If you're scared to do that at this point, then don't worry about it, okay? You'll be able to erase. You can erase quite a bit with your retractable eraser, okay? So I'm gonna get a couple of pieces of colored paper to show the Drawing 2 students some options that they can use. Let me grab that. Okay, sorry, I have way too many art supplies. All right, so I was going to show a few of these papers. Now, I just have smaller pads of this to show, but you can find this at the only place I've found that you can buy like individual sheets of different color drawing paper is Hobby Lobby. Like you can find like maybe pads of certain colors of paper, maybe at Michael's. But Hobby Lobby and Azel are like the only ones I've seen where you can buy like individual sheets of drawing paper in different colors. And my favorite brand for that is called Canson Mi Tienes. And this is it says pastel, but you can use charcoal on it too. And you can see it comes in a variety of different colors. And I'll talk about this when we get to color for drawing 1 and drawing 2. But if you go to Hobby Lobby, they have like a rack of different color of this brand paper. And they have probably, I would say, at least 12 different colors, if not more, at Hobby Lobby. But you can also find it at Azel. I don't know, Azel, a lot of their stores have closed, so I don't know where they are located, but it's ASEL. And if you look them up online, they do have a few stores, I think, in like Plano and downtown Dallas and maybe Arlington. And anyway, so you can buy individual sheets that are 18 by 24. I think they're actually like maybe a little bit bigger than that. So, but you can also find tone. I have an 18 by 24 pad of this. It's just hard to show you, but this is, I doodled all over it, so ignore that. But this is that Strathmore brand paper. I really like it, and it's tone tan paper. So you can see the paper is kind of like a brownish color. And I really like drawing on that light brown paper, especially for value studies. Then you can also find this grayscale drawing pad, and it comes in different black and gray, and then a few white pieces of paper too that you can use for drawing paper. Again, this is a small pad, but you can find the big sheets. But I really think that the best is this Canson pastel paper. It's usually got, you may not be able to see this, but do you see how this side looks kind of textured, like really rough? But then the other side is really smooth. And so it gives you the option of a coarser surface or a smoother surface, so you can use the front or back, depending on what you want to do. So I have here a piece of, these kind of look the same. I have here a piece of gray drawing paper, black drawing paper, and then the brown drawing paper. And with these, you wouldn't have to tone them. But again, I only want the drawing 2 experimenting with this if they choose to use this for this project instead of the white paper, okay? Because I know that you've probably done this in drawing 1. So for the black paper, you can use the white chalk pencil to sketch out your drawing. And if you have like white, I actually have some. If you have like white chalkboard chalk, I have a chalkboard wall in my studio. You can use this to sketch out like your design, because it will wipe away really easy, kind of like the willow charcoal. So you can use the, gotta draw with my left hand so you all can see. You can draw with it to kind of sketch things out, and then you can come back in with your white charcoal pencil to put in the different values, and you can blend this. And if you have the white Conte or white pastel, you can blend that. And if you have gray pastels too, you can, or you can blend it with this. And I've done entire drawings with white chalk, and I'll show you. I think there's maybe some in the PowerPoint, the value PowerPoint, where when these are done right, you can't tell if it was charcoal or if it was white chalk on black paper. So you can create the same illusion by blending those. And you can add charcoal too. So like if you get too dark, you know, on this, and you want to mix a little charcoal to get some of the glaze, you can, or just to make it look a little bit different, you can add charcoal to the black paper too. So that's one option. It is really, your brain will get frustrated because normally whenever we make a mark, it makes a darker mark. So it will take you a while to get used to the opposite thing happening when you make a mark or when you erase. So just be prepared for that. But it is really fun to use. So if any of you in Drawing 2 want to attempt using a color paper, and then what I love about working with the gray and the brown paper is that you get to use both. So it looks just, I don't know, it looks really nice when you can put, dark charcoal down, but then also the wider highlights kind of show up better on the brown paper, or the same thing with the gray paper. You get to create those values, but then, the white kind of shows up more. So it's kind of fun to experiment with using different papers. And it's really more, I don't usually have Drawing 1 students like buy additional papers, but for Drawing 2, I thought if you all wanted to try working on different color papers, you can, because it does sometimes make your drawings look different, and it's a whole other skill set you can add to your tools, I guess. I don't know where I was going with that one. And then I'll show you. I try to draw at least a few times a week, and so I have tons of sketchbooks at home, and this is one I have that is a brown hardbound sketchbook. And so for just the last few months, I've been drawing in it with a variety of different materials, and so it's really nice. You can even find the sketchbooks with different color papers. And these are, oops, this is a sketchbook I found that it's actually filled with black paper. So you can find sketchbooks. I just get on Amazon and I get caught up in all the things that I probably don't need. But you can find a lot of stuff on Amazon and online that you don't always find stores. So that is the assignment for this week, is to do a long value study with charcoal on your drawing paper with the tone paper. So if that was a lot to take in, you can go back and watch the video again. Like I said, I'll send this recording later today.